Okay. So real quick recap. We've got 4 surfaces here on our board, all dressed. Surface, reference face, reference edge, plane to thickness, rip to width on our table saw. Now we're going to cut our 2 ends. So we're going to trim one end first to make sure that we know that we've got this thing dead square. Then we're going to measure, mark it, and trim it to our final length. All right? So in order to do that, actually we've got a couple of choices. All right? We're going to use another table saw. This time it's going to be set up for cross cutting because that's what we're doing when we're trimming the end. We're cutting across the grain of the wood. Okay, so our blade looks a little different. The blade's got typically smaller gullets in it, so that space just in front of the tooth is a little bit smaller. And our teeth now have angles, right? So our teeth actually look more like this if we look at them right down the blade. So they're alternating points, and they're designed for sharp scoring of those end grain fibers, right? So the blade, it is important that we use a blade that's designed for the purpose of the procedure we're doing. Okay? So the saw is still the same otherwise. This time we're not using a fence. Okay? There is no rip fence set up on this saw. This saw is designed just for, basically this is dedicated for cross cutting. Okay? So there's no fence, but we are going to be using a sled. Okay? So right here we have a cross-cutting sled. This is going to fit just like that on your table. Okay?
It's good.
So it does, doesn't it? Yeah. We talked about always needing to support the longest edge of the board, which is why when we did our rip cut, we needed a fence that supported down the longest side of the board. Now we're cutting across the grain. We need to support, again, we need to support the longest edge, so it has to be in the opposite direction. So we're going to be having our board oriented on the sled like this as we push through. Okay? Our blade height needs to be what?
Pencil thickness above.
Yeah, about a pencil thickness, no more than a pencil thickness above your board. So again, the wheel in the front of the saw, we're just going to make that happen. That looks pretty good. Again, we're cutting 90 degrees or a straight up and down cut, so we can leave the adjustment on the side of our saw right where it is, exactly at 90 degrees. Am I trimming this thing to length right now, right away? No, what am I doing first? I'm going to trim just a sliver off one end, right? Just to make sure that I start with a square end, then I can measure and mark the length and cut it. A couple of things about the sled. Where am I never going to put my hands on the sled? 2 places. Okay, good. So under the glass for sure, totally out of bounds. And behind the block, right? I know this thing looks like a really nice handle to push on, but this is not what this is for. There's a big cut here where this, it's actually designed that it can come out, even though there's stops in place. Sometimes there's sawdust that packs up in the back and the sled can ramp out if it's not kept free of sawdust, and the blade can come out there. So that's pretty messy if you got your hand here and you cut into your hand. That's real messy, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So we're going to have our hands, depending on the board that we're cutting, either on either side of the blade or on the same side, right? Again, keeping this controlled the whole time. We're keeping it tight against, we're holding this board tight against the back of the fence. Okay, down on the table, tight against the back of the fence as we do this cut. Smooth forward, smooth back. What can we do after we cut our piece? Can I, what's that?
Pull it from the blade?
Yeah, I can actually pull the wood away from the blade and then pull my sled back, right? That's actually the best practice, and I'd like to see you guys practice that.
I'll practice that.
Practice it at home?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Put in hours. Yeah, so push it ahead, nice and slow and smooth. Slide the wood aside, and then you can pull it back. That way you don't risk accidentally doing any kind of weird marks here if the wood catches, and you know, it's best practice. Okay? So, safety gear, what do we need? Always safety glasses, right? So safety glasses are going on. Earmuffs, again, a good idea, especially if we're all working here at the same time. It's best practice, wear some earmuffs.
Helmet?
A helmet, yeah. Knee pads, neck brace, check, check. So I'm not putting my hands under here, I'm not putting my hands behind here. I'm going to stand just to the left of the blade again as I push through and cut this. And I think I'm in good shape. Okay. So, here we go. This particular saw actually takes a little while for the blade to come up to speed. So let the blade come up to speed first, and then nice and slow and smooth push the wood through. Okay? Here we go. So again, we're just trimming off a sliver to start with. Slide the wood sideways, and back we go. Okay? So now I've got a very nice square, crisp cut end that is accurate, and now I can measure from there to my other end and make the cut. Actually, just a tip as well. You see I have a few knots here, and I may not want those. Trim the sliver, the first sliver off your piece that is the better end. Right, because we know that we're trimming off just a very small amount, then any excess gets taken off. So it might be that we get some of this less desirable wood taken off, right? So I go ahead with a ruler, mark out, and cut this, right? What can I do if I'm making multiple pieces, as you guys will? We're cutting legs that are all the same length, we're cutting rails that are all the same length. What can I do if I'm cutting multiple pieces and they're all the same? Joey.
Set a stop block so it's the same cut every time.
Right, I can set a stop block. So, once I have my measurement set, I can put my ruler in here and measure and put a block in here. This is actually going to work out pretty well. Okay, I'm going to put a block in there, and just with a simple parallel jaw clamp, I'm going to clamp that in place. So now, every piece that I have comes and slides right up against that stop block, and I can go ahead and make that cut. But what have I just done to this board now that I need to be careful about? I've just bound it, right? So this board is now bound by this block. I have to keep control over this piece the whole time. And of course, this time, I'm not going to be able to slide it sideways, right? So I'm just going to have to be very careful and maintain control of this piece. Smooth forward, smooth back. All right? Here we go. Wait for the saw to stop spinning, and now I have a piece that has all 6 surfaces fully dressed. I'm ready to actually go to the next step of joinery or use it in my project. And I've still got my stop block here. I can make multiple cuts, and I know for certain they're all going to be exactly the same in length. Right? Any questions?
Good job, Andre.
Thanks. I know that was pretty amazing.